In today's session, I would be talking about a for loop construct in case of shell scripts, how to construct a for loop. Again, like a while loop, for is also used for iterative actions. In a typical C programming style, one could write a for loop this way. For I, which acts as a counter variable, is equal to 1 until I is less than or equal to 5, increment I every time by 1, print the value of I. So when first time it enters, the value of I is 1. Is 1 less than or equal to 5? Yes. Then I plus plus. Increment the value of I once the loop is executed. Whatever statements are there within the curly braces are the iterative statements. So they would be executed multiple times as long as the condition associated with it evaluates to true. So first time it will print 1 and then the value of I is incremented by 1. New value of I is 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 5? Yes. It prints 2, again increments the value of I by 1. Is 3 less than or equal to 5? It prints 3, increments the value of I by 1. Is 4 less than or equal to 5? Yes. It prints that value, increments the value of I by 1. I now becomes 5. Is 5 less than or equal to 5? Yes. It prints the value of I as 5, increments it by 1. The new value of I is now 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 5? This is where the condition evaluates to false, and this is where the loop also terminates. So statements in a for loop continue to execute as long as the condition associated with that for loop evaluates to true. The moment the first time it evaluates to false, the loop would terminate. And now if there are any statements here, those statements would be executed now. But in case of a Unix shell script, the for loop is written in a different style. In case of a Unix shell script, you say for some counter variable in some list of values. So this list of values are the individual elements for which you want to perform the iterative action, followed by statements between do and done. These are called as the iterative action statements. So as long as this counter variable keeps moving from one value to another in the provided list of values, my iterative statements mentioned within do and done would keep on executing. The moment there are no more values left in the list of values, my loop would terminate. If there are any additional statements after done, they would be executed going forward. So how long my for loop executes? As long as there are elements in the list of values provided. So consider a case that I want to accomplish the same program using a shell script. How it would be written? Hash exclamation bin ksh, which is a shell directive, for I. Now here I becomes my counter variable in list of values. So the list of values itself is having 5 elements as of now. Those 5 elements are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Do print a hello message and print the value of I. Now see how it is different than other programming practices. For the first time, the counter variable I would point out to the first value in the list of values from left to right. Then it will print the value of I as 1. Next time when it goes up, the counter variable will point to the next element in the list of values. I thus becomes 2. Then it prints again a hello message followed by the new value of I, the counter variable, which is 2. It will keep on executing as long as there are elements still available in the list of values. So at some point in time in your program, I would be pointing to a value 4, which is one of the elements in the list of values. It will print this hello message. It will print the value of I as 4. Again it goes on the top. This time I points to the last element in the list of values. Again it prints a hello message. It prints the value of I as 5. Again it goes on the top. Now there are no more values left. This is where the program, the loop terminates, and it would start processing statements, if any, after the done statement. So iterative actions are only executed as long as there are elements available in the list of values. So as long as there are elements available, it will keep on executing. Now there is one thing that we must understand about list of values, very important thing. So let's run this program first, and then we'll understand to what we can call as a list of values. So see here, every time I was pointing to a different I, which is a counter variable. The variable I was pointing to a different element every time from the list of values, as long as there were elements available in the list of values. The moment there were no more elements left in the list of values, the loop terminated and it started executing statements. After the done statement, there was only one of it, the end of the program. Clear? Now another interesting thing to know is what can we call as a list of values and how to obtain this. The list of values can either be mentioned explicitly or can be obtained implicitly by running some Unix command. Now consider this case. How is the list of value mentioned here? It's being mentioned explicitly. Now every time this may not be possible. I may not be able to mention all the values in the list of values explicitly if I do not know while writing the program what could be the probabilities. Here I knew that what could be the probability. My program requirement is to print numbers between 1 to 5 using a for loop. So the numbers or each element in the list of values is statically obtained because I have mentioned that list of values or the elements within it explicitly. What if I do not know beforehand? Then in that case, the list of values can also be obtained implicitly by running some Unix commands. Consider this case. I am opening nums.txt file. So there are already numbers here. So consider a case that I want to print these numbers in sorted order but in a loop. So I don't want to print the entire file in one go. So people say I could have done it by saying simply sort-n nums.txt, it prints me. But it prints it as one single output. What if I want to perform it as an iterative action, printing one number at a time and then performing some action on it probably and then going to another. Probably printing some custom message. like this, which cannot be done using sort command alone. What if I want to do some customization logic, do some kind of a processing against those numbers? Then this cannot be done. Now if I say what are the numbers in nums.txt, I do not know for sure, because this is obtained from a file at runtime, whatever would be the file. Then I am running first sort-n command on nums.txt. Now the whole command itself is included in backticks. So what will be the output of this one? It will sort nums.txt file in a numeric order. So what it will provide me? An output which is similar to this. Once that is done, my for loop will iteratively go from the first element till the last element available in the list of values. Now in this case, has it been statically provided or has it been obtained using a command execution? So this is the second example where the list of value is obtained implicitly by running some Unix command. Whereas in previous case, I have typed statically the numbers in the program logic itself. So whether I run it now or 4 years down the line, there would be no change in my program's output. But in this case, the program's output is likely to change depending upon what is there in nums.txt. Today there are different numbers in nums.txt. My program's output would be different. So here the list of values which is obtained by running some Unix command in a grave accent, and then my counter variable moves from one output element to another element of that sort command and prints this message. So see here, clear? This alone couldn't have been accomplished by only the sort command, because sort command would have only provided you the sorted output. What if I want to process each number differently? And the processing logic in my case is this custom message. It could be any type of a processing for that matter. Clear? Now another way to deal with this same program is, given some numbers in a file, what if I want to perform a sum of all those numbers? So there are only numbers mentioned in the num.txt. I want to perform a sum. Now in this case, I need not sort the file. I can directly cat it so that all the file contents are printed on screen, whether they are in order or not in order. No one cares. So I said sum is equal to 0. Sum is equal to expression $sum plus the value of variable I, and probably at the end I would like to display the total is equal to $sum. So what I am doing, there are n numbers in a file nums.txt. I want to do the addition of all of them. Remember, there is no single Unix command which would have helped you to do this particular thing. Now when I run this thing, it says there's a syntax error there. See here. So whatever numbers are there in my num.txt, processing one number at a time, we have processed all the numbers and obtained a sum of it using a for loop. So understand the way the list of values can be obtained. Now how for loops distinguish between individual elements in the list of values. How does it know this is element 1? How does it know this is element 2? So that is also important. Individual element in the list of values is separated either by a space, tab, or new line character. So those elements themselves could be separated either by a space or by a tab or by a new line. So as long as those numbers are separated, they would be counted as two individual elements if there exists a space, a tab, or a new line between them, which is different than the way while loop interprets a file. So I am going to do a file processing now using for loop and a while loop. So I am writing a custom data file. There are some words for apple, ant. So understand this. So I have written 3 lines. First line having 2 words, second line having 3 words, and the third line is having 4 words into it. Now I want to process this file using a for loop and to see how many times my for loop iterates against this particular file. So I would start writing it. So see here, let's write it here. This would provide you an understanding as to how many times a for loop would iterate against a file. So I said for I in cat custom.data. So what will be the outcome of custom.data? This one. Now my for loop will iterate. Now looking at the data, at some point in time this will become my list of values because I included the cat command in the grave accent command substitution. So once this command is run, this will become my list of values. Now tell me how many times my for loop will iterate. Once, twice, thrice, fourth time, fifth time, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. 9 times my for loop will iterate. Now why? Because individual elements are either separated by a space, a tab, or by a new line. What is the separator between two individual elements here? Space. What is the separator between ant and bat? New line. So my for loop will consider these as individual elements in the list of values. Then I said do echo iteration number $i and the value is, well, I will have to keep on counting it. Now why I am printing X? Just to tell you how many times my loop has iterated against a given file. I have written it as for loop iterations. I will mark this file as executable and then I would run it. See how many times my loop has iterated here. 9 times. So for the first time the value was apple, for the second time it was ant, for the third time, remember between ant and bat there is a new line. So individual elements in the list of values are either separated by a space, by a new line, or by a tab. Clear? This is how the for loop distinguishes this. Now see, what if I want to process the same file a line at a time using a while loop. So I want to process the entire file but one line at a time. There is no way I can say word at a time with a while loop until I use some other technique of chopping that line. But if I apply similar logic for a while loop, see how it would be different. So I said hash exclamation bin ksh, which is my shell directive. Now I am saying cat custom data pipe while read variable line do. Well, I would have also require some variable x to count how many times my loop has iterated. Echo iteration number 1, sorry, $x, and the value of the var line is $var line. X is equal to x plus 1. Done. Now using a while loop, I want to see how many times the file is, or the loop is iteratively performing these actions. So I am saying while loop iterations dot sh. See how many times my while loop has iterated. It's the same file for which the for loop has iterated 9 times. What is the difference? Understand this. This is just a cosmetic effect. X is equal to 1 to understand how many times it was looping through the file. So that's not a part of my main program. Main program says cat the file custom dot data. What would be the outcome of this thing? It will print this, right? Output of this cat command goes as an input to the next command because there is a pipe in between. Now question is, out of this, which is the next command, is while the command or read the command? While is just a decision making structure for iterative actions to evaluate a condition. So the actual command is read. So I said cat the file read in var line. Now understand, while accepting input I told you, where does the read terminates? The read command terminates only on new line. So it waits for multi-line of input, but it terminates when you press and enter. The moment you press and enter, the read terminates. So what will go in the variable? You normally talk about this thing, right? While accepting the input, read followed by variable name. So I said, while there are things to be read, as long as there are things that you can read in the variable var line, keep on performing this action iteratively. So see what happens when the first time it comes. This is the entire output of cat, which is provided as an input to the read statement, which itself is part of a while loop. So for the first time, this is what goes in var line, because after that there is a new line symbol. So read will read only line 1. After that there is a new line. So read terminates there. It goes inside my loop. It says the value of $x is 1 and the var line as of now contains this value. So I have printed the value of var line. See what was there in the var line? Apple and ant. Clear? Next time it again goes on top. Is there anything to be read now? Yes, that is the second line. So it reads the second line, it starts reading it until here. After this there is a new line. My read terminates there again. Again it enters into this. This time the value of x is 2 and the value of var line is bat, ball and bold. Again it goes on the top. Is there anything to read? Answer is yes. It reads the third line, which is followed again by a end of file character. There is no more things to be left. There is no new line, but there is a EOF character, end of file. The read terminates there. It comes inside the loop. It prints the value of x as 3. Var line itself, the variable contains cat, car, color and count. It again increments the value of x to 4. It goes on the top, but there's nothing more to be read. This is where my loop terminates. So understand why for was iterating 9 times? Because it was iteratively performing the action for each word, because that is a individual element in the list of values. Why in this case it was acting differently with a while loop? Because with a while I am performing the command read, and read terminates with a new line. So as long as there were lines available, I said keep on reading one line at a time. So understand the difference. When it comes to processing one line at a time, you can use a while loop. When it comes to processing a word at a time, you can think of doing a for loop. The same while loop could have been written in a different way by saying so see what we are doing. It's one and the same thing. In this case, it was cat, output of cat was passed on to read, which was being done repeatedly using a while loop as long as there is something to be read for the read statement, which assigns that new line that is read in the var line variable. In this case, I said while read line, whatever is that variable, and where the input comes from, the input is again coming from custom.data. So I want to run this time this version of the program, or let me modify the same program. So instead of writing here, I am writing it here, followed by, so no change. So there are two ways to provide an input from a file to a while loop using a read statement as a iterative action that you want to perform. Either say cat file name followed by while read, or just write the while loop, whereas the input coming to the while loop comes from a input redirection operator that gets the data from some file, in my case custom.data. So very important techniques, because whenever you would be processing a multi-line file, you may not be able to perform everything that you want to do on that file using standard Unix commands. And that's the case when you need to start working with individual element or individual line within a file. Now, given this thing, understanding of for and while loop, you are supposed to solve a couple of exercises. So I am putting a pause on this video and we'll go through the exercise. So those exercises are all based on emp.txt and dpt.txt, which I don't have here, but it's available on the shared drive. So if you do not have emp.txt sample data and dept.txt sample data, you can copy it from here. So all the further exercises will be built on this particular assumption that you are working against emp.txt and dept.txt. Let's understand what is the relationship between emp.txt and dept.txt, although it's the same data which comes from Scott schema in Oracle's database. So it shares the same relation, same data. In dept.txt, the first column indicates the department number. The second column indicates the department name. The third column indicates the location. This is the master data for DEPT, departments. And then I have emp.txt. The first column is the employee number. Second column is the employee name. Third column is the job, the designation. Fourth column is the employee ID of my employee's manager, which means 7876 is Adams, whose manager is having an employee number 7788, whereas 7788 is Scott, which in turns means for Adams, Scott is the manager, although his designation is that of an analyst, so need not be necessarily a manager, but the relationship tells so. This is the hire date of that employee, when was the date of joining. This column indicates salary. This column indicates commission, which itself is a nullable value. So for some employees the value is null, means they are not entitled for commission. Whereas for this employee Turner, the commission is 0, which means he is entitled for commission, but the value of commission as of now is 0, followed by the department number. Clear? Now given these things, you need to solve all the SQL queries that you have run on Oracle using custom shell script logic. So well, that's well said and done. I will put a pause on this one and then we'll take down the exercises.